Okay, so the streamer's indicating there should be lift above me. Start with a gentle launch and then attempt to locate the thermal. I need to try and scout the area, creating a mental map for signs of lift. Now, autumn's arrived, so the lift is very light but smooth. I need to keep my inputs to a minimum, and I need to try and enter the thermal at the right angle. Obviously, I need to find the thermal first. And as I approach here, I actually fly through it here, and then the streamer tells me that the thermal's actually passed over and it starts to concentrate in one direction. So I literally, at this height, I've got one chance to get this right. Boom, in the pipe. So the trick now is juggle the speed, flatness of the turns, but also keep them tight enough to stay in the core of the lift. Oh, nearly stalled it, not enough rudder there. At this point I switch into cruise. Quite often the NXT flies better with more speed, but unfortunately my centering's not great here, and I actually fly out the back of the thermal where you can see I'm hitting sync. Really speaking, if the centering is going to be bad, you're better off being further forward of the thermal rather than at the back of it. So I switch back into thermal mode in an attempt to get a little bit more float. Get slightly tighter turns, and the model's slightly slower, and you can see I start to gain a little bit of altitude. You probably notice the stream has been indicating lift over to my right for quite some time. So at this point it's a case of, do you stick with where you are, or do you basically make a move? I decide to put it in cruise and head over in the direction indicated by the streamer. I'm not particularly being smooth here. I'm steering right and left, which is not particularly efficient. I'm losing a bit of height. And the stronger lift is probably further downwind, but it's too high. I need to get into the thermal, which is going to be nearer to me. So what happens next is a classic case of getting impatient with a lift. You're not basically gaining height quick enough, and logic says that the thermal's moving downwind. And you can see I go scouting looking for better lift, and I actually find sink, and I end up coming back and making the same mistake again, lose even more lift. And I'm basically back to square one, picking up the original lift, which doesn't appear to have moved, mainly because I'm not gaining in height quick enough. The lift is marginal. So the stream has actually moved further over to the left. There's obviously thermals firing off all over the sky, and it's just about picking the right thermal and making the move at the right time. Obviously the more height you've got, the more options you've got. So you can see I actually chose to ignore the sign of lift further over to the left, and I've concentrated on the area I'm in currently, which seems to be actually giving me a reasonable rate of climb.
5 minutes.
So obviously the streamer isn't gospel, you know, it's just an indicator. You've got to look at the aircraft and you've got to basically make a decision on what you're seeing in the air and what the aircraft's doing. It's also worth mentioning that the streamer is only indicating what's happening on the ground, you know, where your aircraft is up in the sky. Completely different's happening probably, you know, it's just reading what the aircraft's doing. So the model's probably looking incredibly small at this point, so I think it's time to wrap up the video. Before I close, I'm just going to show the altimeter trace from this flight and also 2 other flights I've had recently. So the flight you've just watched, you can see it took around 5 minutes for me to actually find any decent lift before I was able to get away. This second flight I had last week, and it shows one of the reasons why I love DLG so much. It was just a simple javelin launch, a couple of meters off the ground, and I basically found a thermal and I pretty much followed it all the way up at a pretty steady rate of climb, and I was just shy of 1,700 feet when I basically lost the lift and started to come down. This third flight, you can see it took around about 12 minutes of pretty hard work before I was able to get away, and I gained about 1,000 feet, and it was actually a pretty good flight. It was just shy of an hour, and I nearly got away right at the end, but unfortunately the lift evaporated. But considering it's now autumn, it was a pretty good flight really.